Hello folks, Game Methuselah here. How are you? Not going to be able to see my pretty face today because I'm working on a little painting prep video here, and a lot of people had requested some information about the rub and buff. So I thought I would do that, and not part of the painting vid, because rub and buff is a feature I use that, some people may not want to use, and I wanted to provide the options of both. So the painting demo, we'll sort of talk about both, but I thought now I would cover rub and buff because it's kind of specific. Again, since I want to have you building miniature collections, I wanted to give you some other little tips. These have recently come out. Reaver did them on their Kickstarter. They've since obviously continued to sell them. There are some other companies that are putting them out as well. They're little clear creatures that they have in various different colors. They're in blues, they're in purples. I bought some in the Dungeons & Dragons sets that are multicolored. They're really nice. A little tip I just want to give you. Before you use these, and a lot of times when you're building a collection, my suggestion is just use them exactly right out of the box. You can give them washes. You can paint details. On this one, I might have to, and I think what'll happen is this one will get used. I'll continue on the painting demo. But what I'm doing right now is I'm painting the bottom of the base white. I always mount everything or slap a magnet on it. Most of you guys will hopefully be doing similar to that for transportation. But I found this out, sadly, a little bit the hard way. But you want to paint the bottoms white. The reason is the color white reflects light. Black does not. So if you put a black magnet on top of these figures and glue it down, when you paint it, the bottom of your shade, ghost, whatever this clear spirit thing is, will be black. And that's not what you're looking for. So what'll happen when you go to paint these, is that you'll just more than likely put a brown paint and some flock on the bottom on top of the base to give it a ground cover. And if you look on my Twitter page, you'll likely see that I've shown that. I've done this before and shown people how to do this. But it's a good tip to know. Basically, just paint the bases white, set them aside for future use, and then when you mount them and stuff, you'll be able to get light reflecting back through the clear plastic, and will give you a good opportunity to have a nice looking effect. So, to that end, the other thing I wanted to talk to you about briefly, again, building a collection, are these pre-painted plastics. I had mentioned them to you. I'd also mentioned the fact that there are the ways I store things, and since I do magnets, most of the strip magnets, as you've seen in my last vid, I wanted to show you the alternate ones. And these are those little metal magnets I was talking about that you can get at the hobby shops, and I'm sure you can get them online too, and they are actually amazingly strong. Now, there's a bigger one as well. Let me move this out of the way. And that's this guy. And he has a lot of power. I really thought about him initially using him for larger plastic creatures. But any of these models obviously could take it. But he's a little too tall for most of the figs. So you'd actually have to take your crafting knife and cut down the base internally a little. So I'm not going to actually deal with him right now. But I got to be careful because he'll suck up all the other magnets if I put him near it. But all you need to do, take your figure, your little pre-painted fig, obviously a little drop of glue, and boop, stick the magnet on it. Now, the nice thing about these is that these magnets stick in either direction. I think I put a little too much glue, but and since they'll stick in either direction, it doesn't really matter how you glue them on. Now, just set them aside, and then later on, you could, you can put them in your box and do whatever. I will likely use both of these that I'm going to do now also for my speed painting demo to show you how to get the plastics to look nicer. I really kind of like this undead. I think it's kind of iconic. You could use it as a skeleton. You could use it as almost a wight or a wraith. It's pretty effective. And again, really simple. Oops. Got to get a little practice on making sure you can see all this. Just a dollop of glue, not much at all, and then stick the magnet on it. I'm going to apologize for the. This is the first time I've actually tried to film myself actually painting, so this might get a little rough, but I think you'll get the idea. Going into the rub and buff, I want to show you a couple things that you can use it for. Obviously, I use it a lot for little treasures. You can just rub and buff gold and silver and all kinds of things and get a different sheen. The little pot I painted black, the little vase I painted blue, and then when I rub and buffed it, you get sort of interesting tones that kind of look like could be glass, just could be some kind of little genie bottle. And then when you put it on your terrain, I love Dwarven Forge terrain pieces. I have some of the old ones. These are the new ones. They're pretty good. I kind of like the old ones, look a little bit better, but these things are effectively indestructible and they weigh less. The indestructible I like because a lot of the older ones, the ceramic ones, start to break after a while. Matt has a lot of the ones I had gotten from back in the 80s. There was a Off the Rails company, and I found these things. I've never been able to find many of them at all, but I believe the company was called Off the Rails, and they made these ceramic tiles, which Steve and myself painted. Matt sort of fell in love with them, so I gave him to him, and then he gave me a bunch of these old Dwarven Forge figures, the new Dwarven Forge figures, to go replace them. So that was a good trade, I think, for both of us. I think he liked the history, and I liked the volume of figs. Rub and Buff shows some interesting details. This is what I talked about, the higher burnish, painted dark brown. Then I just rub and buffed a bunch of it until I get a color I like. You'll notice that the edge of his halberd actually has a blue tinge to it because I painted the halberd, as I told you, blue. So when I rub and buffed it, I got a blue tone. Now I'll be showing you that in just a second. Different types of golds. This is sort of a Grecian gold. It works fine. I put it, this is sort of usually the level I put it on. You can see I did her weapon in silver. But you can learn from that and just move forward as you go. Different colors, different patterns. This one is, I wanted to show you just because you're not going to see this feature from me for a while. This is actually rub and buffed silver. On top of silver, I then used a yellow ink. I did that to get a different tonal gold quality. Looks very different from what you're going to get from the rub and buffs. So there's lots of little tricks you can learn to how to make things different. Out of the way. Again, silver, even on wizards. Now, something I wanted to tell you. I learned this from Steve. When he's prepping a figure, he almost rub and buffs everything. This is one of his figures that he never got a chance to paint. You can see it's more been sitting around in my thing for a long time because it's got a lot of dirt on it. But it brought up all the detail. And you would find things like this little chain, obviously the sword and things that you would want to leave the metal feature. But everything else you'd paint over, of course. The interesting factor is it actually adds some interesting total tone and shade qualities to your painting. So it's a little factor to look into as we go. Recently just did this guy set up for Roman folks. I wanted him, again, more of a burnished metal. So I did a lot of brushing on that. Now going to specifically the rub and buff material. I'm going to start with the blue, just to show you what I was talking about if you wanted some sort of an elven look. Often it's very interesting when, as I mentioned, the stuff doesn't tend to dry out too much. I just take the brush, my rub and buff brush, don't do anything to it. If I was painting like an orc or a goblin and this was brown, you just start rubbing it on and you can start to pick up the detail right off the bat. Now, this is good, again, for rougher, raw materials. Now, if I kept doing this for quite a long time, and as you see, it keeps getting shinier and shinier, and there's more and more silver just coming off the brush. I've actually not even gone into the jar of the rub and buff. Now, I'll do that right now only because I want to show you some of the basic ways to do it. You just put a little bit on a piece of cardboard or paper that you're going to utilize. Some of this gets a little dry after a while, which actually makes no difference. If this stuff dries out, it actually doesn't harm or hinder you in any way. It's still usually just as effective when it's completely dry. It's a clay product, and to that end, it works pretty good. I guess I should have checked to see what the condition my rub and buff materials are before I used them, but oops, I didn't. Anyway, you take it, you get it on the brush, and then basically you rub it off. The idea is you don't want much on your brush at all. You can use your finger, you can use a sponge, you can use a rag. I don't do any of those because I don't like the effect. Well, what I do is I just prep up here like this, and then I just go ahead and rub it on. Put it here so you can see it. You just rub and rub and rub and rub and rub. And again, like I said, the more you rub it, the shinier it's going to get. So as you work on the figures, eventually you're going to get a shinier silver. Again, with the blue base coat, you're going to get the blue sort of showing through in areas. Now, obviously, where I didn't put much in it, this is what I talked about for a more modern type metal, something where you want a blue sheen to the metal, as if its heat treatment had made it something different than what might have been made out of forge. Going away to that, here's a goblin, orc, Blood Bowl figure, and again, without doing anything, you just rub it on. And you might notice that the brown paint I put on it, I didn't put on necessarily uniformly. That's kind of intentional to keep the details of the miniatures good, so you don't lose any of the detail. But also what it allows you to do is get, again, different tones of paint. With a lighter brown, you get a different metallic look. With a darker brown, you're going to get a darker one, which I'll just show you in a second. And again, you can go on as long as you want. If you wanted it to be obviously a little rougher, I don't necessarily think the quality of this camera shows all the detail quite as well as I would hope. But maybe in the future, if I get a better camera that does show more detail differential, we'll readdress this. But as you use the product, you'll begin to see that yourself, and you'll be able to judge how much shine, how much work you want to do on the figure to get the effects you want. Always work with as little rub and buff on your brush as you can. You can always add more. If you glop it on your brush and have a big thick amount, you don't rub it off and you go across here, you could end up with this big, huge silver streak right across your figure. And that's not what you want. You want it to slowly, work at it. And since really this is replacing most of your metal painting, it's really fast. And again, as you know from my concept of speed painting, I like fast. I like figures that look strong, look good, give a nice imagery, and are fast to paint. That's basically sort of a reasonable facsimile on that. Again, here's another orc figure. I wanted to use those because we could start out small. This one I kind of like because he's in full plate armor. But again, you can do the swords. I tend to spend more time buffing the swords because I want them to have a nicer sheen. However, it may be a situation that you might look at it and say, well, no, I want that sword to look really crude, or, rusty, or, crude, made in a poor forge that didn't have a high lot of quality. So as I do this, you can sort of see, if you can see, because I'm not when I'm not blocking it with my hand, sorry about that, that you can get the effect you want. And again, you can look at it and say, am I happy with that? Do I want just to be, that to be that dark? And in this case, I wouldn't, but you might. I mean, it may be a situation that you don't want this guy to be, very high end. You want it to look like your stuff is pretty crude. So you might actually go with this. And if you want more, of course, the ability is you just can keep brushing it on. And if it gets to a point where you feel it's not applying, you can just add just a tiny more of the silver. I'm totally missing the screen here a lot of times. I apologize for that. But I will get better with these techniques to show you. And again, we'll go over this on the painting demo too a little bit, but I wanted to basically talk to you because first time using rub and buff sometimes can be daunting. Sometimes you can get some mistakes. People have already gone out and purchased it and are asking me, questions about it. So I wanted to get this out quick. So hopefully people get a chance to get their figures started and going. Other things I like to do is we were talking about building the collections. These are the pre-painted plastics. This is a MOG. MOG, I think it came out in 3.5. It went into 4th edition, I believe. I don't think it's in 5th edition D&D. But for me, since, like I said, I do a lot of non-D&D, I might use this as a golem or something else. But again, just take the brush, start rubbing it over the figure, and what you do is you bring out a shine. And you can get this sort of construct sort of look. Doesn't have to be much. Anything you do adds to the quantity and to the volume of visuals. It also brings up detail. A lot of times these figures have some detail in it, but you don't tend to see them too much. Again, I'm going to do this as quick because I want to make sure we can move on. And I wanted to kind of learn about the fact, since I paint so fast, I tend to move my figures around a lot, which is hard, obviously, to film. So anyhow, here we go. And as you can see, I didn't spend really any time on this, but I got kind of a nice little effect for maybe a construct of some sort. And I'll keep working on this, and then when we go into the painting demo, we'll work on it some more, and I'll show you what maybe an end goal is. I would then just flock the base, and then I have a golem now set for my collection. These things, even individually, you can buy. There are some places online that you can purchase from that sell these. A little hobby shop that Matt and I both attend over in Bellflower called the Guild House. The folks there open up the boxes that the miniatures come in, and they sell them individually, which is kind of nice because, you may not be looking for all the different sets, but we'll talk about that some more. I was going to start showing you the gold too and use my Bast miniature, but really this video is starting to run long, and I think I've gotten the information to you that I wanted to. We'll go over more of that in the case, but the gold works pretty much exactly the same way the silver does. So in the future, again, when you're going to build a little set, you can use your little figs, and they all look good when things are a bit more painted. But I think you've got it. So until I get into the paint video, and I'll relook at this, I might reshoot this if it's really crappy. But fight me, devils. I hate peace, and hopefully we'll be talking to you real soon about getting this stuff painted. Have a good weekend.